Story by The Cowboy Troy, The Delivery Beyond. I know what it sounds like Chicken Little, the sky is falling. But no, I was 20 years old, now 25. I was working as a Dominoes delivery driver while waiting to ship off to boot camp. I lived in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, and usually at night, which this was, it was only me and 2 other people working, but tonight was different. I was the only driver. We got a call to deliver to this guy, infamous for not leaving a tip, but it was my job, so I went anyway. He lived about 35 minutes away, just on the edge of our delivery zone. And on the way there, power lines were knocked over all around, which I remember being really confused by, because there hadn't been any big storms or anything the last couple days, but I drove slow and around them when they were in the street. I give him the pizza and leave, and I start driving back. And in the back of my mind, surrounded by the woods, something told me to look up, and I did. I stopped my truck, got out, and just stared into the sky. Like I said, I lived in the woods in Bayou-ish area of Louisiana where we can still see the stars, and it looked like a giant rectangular piece of the sky was missing. It was jet black in that place only. I stared at it without moving for probably 3 to 4 minutes before a noise to my right spooked me, so I turned to see what it was, and when I looked back up, the rectangle was gone. Or back? The sky was normal, but I know for a fact I saw what I saw. I never once told anyone and always kind of just blocked it out until recently. I'm still lost to this day on what it was. It was a perfect rectangle. I don't believe in aliens or paranormal stuff or whatever, but I know what I saw. So I've mentioned before like a listing of all glitch types. You have quantum immortality, multiverse travel, space-time portals, DLP, all that good stuff. And I also believe there's just universal error. The universe you're occupying glitched out. The area that you're in, its server, processing information in the sky that you had to be fed, the information is all relayed into you. It's like a hub, a proxy. The information is gathered there and then relayed back. It's input and output. You have to have the input as well. So you're seeing this error, not in the same server you're in, but just above it. One caveat, this could also be aliens. I don't think so. Mainly how you describe it. I mean, it could be a cloak, but I think if aliens had cloak, they would be able to reflect the stars in the back above it to the fore. It's like in the James Bond movie with Pierce Brosnan. They're in this like ice castle and they have this reflective car. They can project what's behind the car to the front, but it depends on perspective and all that good stuff. It's pretty cool technology. I actually really like that movie. Some people don't. Kind of campy in a way, but I just love it. I like Pierce Brosnan as James Bond. Anyways, not aliens, I don't think so, because I think their technology would be superior enough that you wouldn't spot it. Unless it was malfunctioning, I guess. But no, I think this is just the universe glitching out. And that's, I mean, the core essence of a glitch is the universe failing, right? But it repairs itself pretty quickly. Time processes in the real world could be very different. Maybe this took weeks to repair in the real world, but only seconds in our perspective of this reality. Welcome, I'm Paul. This is Dave, snuggled up cozily inside my little hoodie. Yeah, I'm sure he's happy. Okay, so I got 8 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you today. My favorite one, the first one, involving the rectangle in the sky, is just so fascinating, but the one coming up after the next one, stupid hair in my eye, just a very well written story and very detailed. Gotta love it. You'll see. Let's get to it. Story by Additional Let 9875, The Great Green Escape. So I was in my room studying at my desk. My desk was filled with books, and at the edge of my desk was this bright green laminated bookmark that our teacher had given to us. It had some useful phrases on it for us to remember. Anyways, I moved my books, and that bookmark fell off the desk, and I looked at it as it fell. I saw where it was about to land, but I blinked or looked away, I'm not sure, and it suddenly wasn't on the ground. I figured it could have fallen under or into my backpack, which was right next to my desk. I checked and it wasn't there. I didn't really need it, but it was driving me crazy that it had just disappeared in front of my eyes. So I started tearing my room apart to find it. I started looking into places that it couldn't possibly have been in. I moved my desk and bed across the room, checked under the carpet, behind, under, and in my bookshelf. I even started looking for it outside of my room, in case it had mysteriously slid under my door into the corridor, but it was nowhere to be found. At some point, I gave up. After we took the exam, about a week later, I told my friends what had happened and said that it would probably show up now that I didn't need it anymore. So I decided to text my mom if she had seen a neon green laminated piece of paper, which was hard to miss. She answered no, but a couple of minutes later, she sent me a picture of it, asking, "Is this it?" I was like, "Yeah, where did you find it?" She had found it under the table in the living room. My room is on one side of the house, and the living room is on the other side of it. It couldn't have traveled there on its own. And if anyone from my family had found it, they wouldn't have put it there, since it had English writing on it, and I'm the only one going to school, and therefore the only one who would own something like that. No one else in my family speaks English. So why not just bring it to my room? I wouldn't find this so scary had I not torn apart my room for almost an hour straight just to find it. It really just disappeared into thin air and reappeared in the living room. And a couple months later, I had a similar incident at work, but I won't go into that one now. Story by Civil Technology 805. The Man Who Didn't Run. This happened around 2007, and my girlfriend at the time and I were 18 or 19, about a year out of high school. Because of not so great circumstances, we were living in a 2-bedroom house with my girlfriend's dad, who is kind of a burnout. Regardless, he was a good guy who mostly had his crap together and was kind enough to let his daughter and her loser boyfriend stay with him while we all sorted stuff out. I mention all this for context because as a household of 2 cocky teens and a burnout, we were kind of the troublemakers of the neighborhood. We didn't keep up our lawn, made loud noises late at night, parked our cars on the wrong side of the road, and left our garbage cans out for days at a time. As a result, girlfriend's dad had developed a kind of rivalry with the lady in the house across the street. She was a bit of a Karen before we called them Karens, and would stick her nose where we didn't think it belonged. So girlfriend's dad would get in bitching matches with her, telling her to frick off and mind her own business and whatnot. The lady had 2 daughters, the elder was high school aged, and the younger was between 5 and 7 years old. Despite mom being snooty to us, the daughters were friendly enough. The younger daughter was a bit of a talker and would just tell her about her life in a way that big-mouthed little kids do. Also, I feel like I have to mention that this all happened in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And well, if you know, you know. If you're a native or just live there for an extended period of time, you're most likely aware that it's a magnet town for weird crap. There are all sorts of conspiracy theories and myths about government weirdness, cults, ghost stories, and high strangeness. I'm just saying, if you've been there, there's a good chance you've seen some strange stuff. I could probably share 10 or 15 more stories about weird stuff in the Springs, but we'll stick to this one for today. So on to the actual story. It was some summer night between July and September. I remember because it was still warm around 11 p.m. The moon was also full or near full because despite being the dead of night, visibility was pretty good. Combined with the streetlights, it really wasn't very dark out at all. Girlfriend and I were getting home late from hanging out with some friends. At the time, neither of us drank or did drugs or anything like that, so we were both stone sober. We decided to park in front of Karen Lady's house because she had done something to piss off Dad earlier, and we thought it would be funny to retaliate. Girlfriend and I were having some funny conversation as we were getting out of the car, and I was mid-rant. As I was going on, she suddenly hissed my name to shut me up, and I quickly noticed her expression had changed. Her eyes were wide and she was looking toward Karen Lady's house. She wordlessly signaled, as I wasn't getting what she was doing at first, and I turned to see what had got her attention. Standing, with his back to us, right in front of the leftmost front window of Karen Lady's house, was a man in a long-sleeve jacket and jeans. He was dead still, staring into the window. We were about 10 or 15 feet from him, separated only from the front lawn of the house, but he did not seem to notice or acknowledge us. It did not affect him in the slightest that we had driven up and were talking loudly, nor that we had obviously noticed him. We were particularly disturbed because, to our knowledge, the window the man was staring in was to the youngest daughter's bedroom. The little girl had told us before that, "That's my bedroom," while pointing to that window, and we had joked to ourselves that it was weird of Mom to post her youngest up toward the front of the house. In some ways, we were somewhat vindicated in our joking by seeing this creep stare into her window. I was a scrawny, cowardly teen, so I had no interest in engaging this weirdo. Instead, girlfriend and I scurried across the street and into our house. Dad was awake and we wasted no time letting him know what was going on. He stepped out onto the porch and confirmed that the guy was still there. While we stood with him, her dad started yelling across the street. "Hey!" he started, and then when the creep didn't react, "Hey, fricker!" The guy still didn't even budge, so the three of us watched a few minutes more before we finally decided to call the cops. Dad went to bed, washing his hands of the whole thing because he didn't like the cops and just assumed this would drum up more bad blood between him and Karen Lady. We called a non-emergency police line and explained to the dispatcher the whole situation, that there was some guy staring into the neighbor's house, that we did not recognize him, that we knew the window belonged to the youngest daughter's bedroom, and that he had been there at least for 30 minutes now. The dispatch lady replied that she would have the nearest police patrol to the neighborhood as soon as possible, and to keep eye on the creep if we could. We were happy to oblige, and just kept watching this guy while we loudly spoke to the police line on the front porch. There was no way this creep couldn't hear us as we described him and the situation to the police. Still, he just stood there motionless. Here's where it gets even more freaky. It was about 10 minutes before a police cruiser turned the corner onto our block. We stayed on the line with the dispatcher the entire time, reaffirming that the man was still there. As the police entered our neighborhood, they turned on a huge spotlight and swept it back and forth across the front of each house on the block. They were very deliberate as they searched, driving only 5 or so miles per hour and slowly scanning the front of each house. When they finally reached Karen's house, the light swept across the front door and moved to the window with the offending creep in front. We thought the cops had found him as the light stopped and hung right on the guy for a good 5 seconds. We watched very plainly as the light cast a huge shadow with his silhouette onto the front of the house. As the spotlight hit him, the creep moved for the first time since we noticed him. His shadow, reacting to the light, turned and started to slowly step to the left. The cop started to move the light again, and when it was off the window, the man was gone. He had not started to run or dodge. He was not fleeing as the light passed him by. His body had just disappeared. It was like the spotlight itself had erased him from the side of the house. Girlfriend and I started freaking out on the phone, yelling at the lady on the other end that the guy had just vanished into thin air. The dispatcher insisted we calm down and to describe what had just happened. We said the cops had the guy in the spotlight and he just disappeared. The police car left the block and the dispatcher said she'd have the officers follow up with us. Now, of course, you could say that we just didn't see the guy as he ran away, but it would be very hard for either of us to miss him fleeing. The way the neighborhood was constructed, each house was packed closely together with high fences in between. Our houses were in the middle of the block, and the creep could really only run east or west across clear front yards or the road. To the immediate left of Karen's house, the direction the man turned before disappearing, was a tall fence with no foothold to easily climb. If he had wanted to jump the fence, he would have had to scurry up or perform some superhuman leap to clear it, which we did not see him do. The neighborhood had no bushes for him to hide in, and really the only thing he could have hid behind was our car that we had parked in front of the house, but that was to the opposite direction that he had turned when caught by the spotlight. As I said before, visibility was pretty good due to the full moon, streetlights, and house lights from Karen's porch. Obviously, visibility was not 100%, but I would admit if it was dark enough to just lose him into the night. I assure you, that wasn't the case. By our witness, he had seriously just disappeared, dematerialized in that spotlight. The cops came around about 10 minutes later and knocked on our door. The first thing they asked was for us to confirm which house we had seen the creep. We were confused and told them it was a house right across from us and insisted they had the spotlight on the guy for a good 5 seconds. Both officers said they had seen nothing and had us point where the guy was. We walked across the street with them and told them that they had definitely had the light on the guy for a significant amount of time, and we thought they had seen him. The police were as confused as we were and assured us they didn't see anyone. They ended up knocking on Karen's door that night and talking to her before returning to talk to us. Apparently, Karen had told the cops that the man was probably the older daughter's boyfriend and that he was probably playing a prank on her. We were flabbergasted. Explained that the window the guy was looking in was to the youngest daughter's bedroom, and that the whole situation seemed really suspicious. Ultimately, there wasn't much more the cops could do except patrol the area for a while longer before leaving. After all, they hadn't seen anyone suspicious in their search. Suffice to say, the whole event left a very weird taste in our mouths, and we were left completely confused and without any answers for the rest of the night. It would be odd enough for a guy to be peeping on a little girl at night, but his insane disappearance left us deeply disturbed into the next day. And further, we ended up even more pissed off by Karen, who tried to play off some weirdo creeping on our kids as some sort of prank from a boyfriend. We assumed she just didn't want to cooperate because of her feud with us. But come on, we were trying to help her family. I still occasionally talk to my ex-girlfriend, and I'll ask every once in a while if she remembers at night. She says, of course, and I can at least rest assured I didn't hallucinate the whole thing. Yeah, it's hard not to love this story just because it's so detailed. I love when people are able to convey so much information in their stories, but still make it very readable. I thought, reading this flowed very easily. Given how large it is, it felt like it passed like any other story. So that's an accomplishment in of itself, I'd say. But yeah, as to the man who is appearing there, I don't think it's a man with superpowers, as cool as that would be. Could be two things. A man from a different universe, just seeing into this one, being here temporarily, or it could be one of those shadow people that you hear about, which I believe shadow people are stuck in limbo between one universe and another adjacent one. They're stuck in that in-between, whatever that implies. Curious though, it has to just be their soul, because if they were physically stuck there, they would die of dehydration pretty quickly. So it has to just be their soul. Now, why would they be looking in there to this place? I don't know. Maybe in their universe, they live there, or maybe they have X. Maybe they are indeed a stalker, just not from this universe. Yeah. But it does make you also wonder, then they were fully here enough to know the cops were there shining a light on them. And they kind of turned, to orient themselves to run away, but then they just vanished. So it kind of implies that something was able to interact with this man, to pull them back to their originating universe, if that is indeed what happened. I don't know why any entity that could enable the transfer between universes would try to do that for this person. Very odd altogether. I mean, if it was superpowers, it's odd. No matter how you square it, it's odd. Story by Dewey Shodu, The Crayon Conservation Law. Ever since I was a child, I had a recurring issue. My stuff, especially my colored pencils, crayons, and so on, would disappear, while others would duplicate. I was always a very organized person, very organized. I always buy one piece and pack, etc. of whatever I need, and believe me when I say, it will stay exactly where it should be. My pencil cases, brushes, paints, notebooks are organized by color and size till this day. Yet somehow, every single time when I put something away with an intent to not use it for a while, trip, summer break, whatever, I come back to my stuff and something is always missing. But the spot it was in, never empty. If my red pencil goes missing, I can be sure as hell blue or some other color will be in its place. while the other OG blue pencil is still in its place, obviously. Same brand, same set. It's even used to a similar extent. It's been happening my whole life. Now, when it happens, I don't even think about it twice anymore, because it's just a thing that happens to me since always, and that's it. An inconvenience. But then, once in a blue moon, I sit on it, and I can't help but wonder what the hell is happening to my stuff, and where do these things come from? I'm also quite positive it's probably happened with my other stuff as well, like socks, press-on nails, and so on. But the art stuff is the only thing you can actually look at and say, what the hell? Story by Silly Durian, 9280. A strange airdrop. So it was Thanksgiving of 2022, and I was visiting my cousins at their house. My phone was on low battery, and I got my charger out and plugged it into their outlet. Once we had to leave, I packed up my charger and phone into my bag. My mom, brother, and I left and got in the car. It was a 40-minute drive or so back to our house. Anyways, right when we got home, I opened my bag at the door. It was on the floor, and my phone was completely gone. I looked everywhere in the bag and knew there was no possible way it could be anywhere in the house, because I just had it at my cousin's house. I went back and looked everywhere in the car, under the floor mats and everything, and it wasn't there. My mom texted my aunt asking if I had left it there and described where it last was, and she said no, and they never found it. I just accepted that maybe it had dropped on the sidewalk or on our way to the car somehow and was probably gone by now. So I didn't have a phone for months. Until my dad got me a new one, since I hadn't been having one for a while. So my parents are divorced, and I had been living with my mom when all this occurred. I eventually decided to move in with my dad for a bit. After a few months of living with him, one day, I walked into his spare room. We barely went in, and I saw my old phone sitting right in the middle of the chair there. It was the exact same one. I know this for a fact because it has the exact same cracks on the screen and everything. The cracks were in weird places such as the camera as well. Same model, same phone. I tried turning it on, but it was completely dead and broke and didn't charge up either. I asked my dad if he had put it there, somehow, and he said he hadn't ever put it there and had no idea how my phone got there. I hardly ever visit him in between the time I lost my phone and when I moved in, and I'm 100% sure I didn't somehow bring my old phone with me because I didn't even have one, plus got a new one later on, and have it end up in the middle of the chair in that room. It still freaks me out how it even got there. Story by Ready Set Get Wet, the Spare Son timeline. Maybe I'm going crazy. It sure feels like it. Earlier today, I was heading out of the living room to speak with my son, who I knew was in the kitchen doing dishes. As I walked by our patio door, I saw my son sitting on the deck reading a book. The sun was shining, and he was in an entirely different outfit. It was pouring rain here all day. I had quickly walked by, and it took my brain a moment to comprehend what I saw, so I stopped and stepped back to look again, and it was back to raining, and the chair he was sitting on had some pool towels on it. My son was still in the kitchen. I wrote that one off to just a momentary lapse and didn't think much of it. Later though, I'm making my bed. My youngest sleeps with me most nights instead of his own bed, so it's not uncommon for his toys to be there. His favorite stuffy is tucked in, so I moved it and pulled the sheet back. And there's an exact duplicate of it. Now, this stuffy was missing for over a month, and I just recently found it, folded up inside a fish-shaped sleeping bag. No one replaced it during that time. We searched high and low until we came across it randomly. Now, suddenly, we have two, and no one knows where the second one came from? Not only that, but how would both be in my bed, and no one noticed that there are two identical stuffed animals? Story by Roundhawk 4867, Flush Point Error. About a year ago, something happened that I still can't explain. I live with my family in a small condo. Nothing weird about it. There's no history, no haunted house kind of thing. But this day was different. It wasn't late, probably around noon. I went downstairs to use the bathroom, the one right by our front door. I've used that bathroom hundreds of times. I know where it is, but when I opened the door, it wasn't the bathroom. Behind it was a large empty room I'd never seen before. It looked like a waiting area, rows of those cheap metal chairs lined up like it was some kind of clinic or office lobby. The walls were beige, the floor was brown carpet, bright fluorescent lights were buzzing overhead. No windows or signs, just this weird sterile room. All the chairs were of the same dull color, except for one. A single, yellowish chair sitting off-center in one of the rows. It didn't look new or important. It just didn't match the others, and it drew my eye immediately. To be clear, I didn't go in. I didn't even lean forward. I just stood there staring like an idiot. It didn't feel like a dream, and I wasn't tired. I wasn't on meds. I was just a little freaked out, trying to figure out how I could be seeing something like this in my own restroom. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't take a picture. Not that it even crossed my mind at the time. I was too focused on what I was seeing, or maybe not seeing. After maybe 10 seconds, I shut the door, waited a few moments. I opened it again. Bathroom. Completely normal, tile floor, toilet, towel rack. Just like always. I haven't seen that room ever again. No other weird events here. Never told my parents because I didn't know how to even begin explaining it. But I know what I saw, and I know I wasn't imagining it. If anyone's had something similar happen, even once, I'd love to hear it. Still don't know what to make of this. But if I ever see that room again, I'm not opening that door twice. Yeah, this feels like liminal space, like the Backrooms movie. You didn't go in, which is a good idea. If you went in, I don't think we'd be reading this story. As morbid as that sounds, I think you'd have trouble posting it because you wouldn't be around anymore. Or maybe you'd get back eventually, but yeah, it would take a while. I've never encountered anything even remotely like that. The problem is if I went to the bathroom now after recording this, and I found some, backrooms liminal space area, that was what I was seeing, I would be so tempted to go in. And if I stop posting, it's probably because I'm trapped in the backrooms, just so you know. Oh my god. Story by Fast Aioli, 1494. Calibrated Chaos. Yesterday, my husband and I ate some noodles. Before we ate, my husband used a kitchen scale to divide the noodles into equal portions. He used a scale on the kitchen counter because he doesn't have a habit of bringing the scale to the dining table. I used to bring the scale to the dining table when I was tracking calories, but I haven't done that in a long time because I've been too lazy to count calories lately. After we finished eating, my husband cleaned the table. There was definitely no scale on the dining table, and I noticed that too. Then we went upstairs. I took a shower, got into bed, and started scrolling on my phone. After my husband finished his shower, he went downstairs to put on body lotion and pour himself a glass of tea to bring upstairs. He didn't use a scale, and he normally never touches it outside of the kitchen. Later, we played computer games upstairs for a while. At one point, I wanted a Diet Coke, so I went downstairs to the kitchen. I didn't even turn on the light because I was being lazy. I went straight to the refrigerator, grabbed a Diet Coke, rinsed off the bottle because it felt a little dirty, and then went back upstairs. I didn't touch anything else besides the refrigerator and the Coke bottle. After we finished gaming, we both went downstairs. That's when my husband noticed the scale sitting on the dining table. The strange part was how neatly it was placed. The edge of the scale was perfectly aligned with the edge of the table, as if someone had carefully positioned it there. My husband asked if I had put the scale on the table. I said no, because I hadn't touched it. He said he hadn't touched it either, and we were both so confused. I know my husband doesn't have a habit of taking the scale out of the kitchen, and he knows I don't usually place things in such a neat and precise way. We checked the entire house, and there was nobody else there. We don't have guests, roommates, or friends staying with us, no children. It was just the two of us in the house. So we're still completely flabbergasted about how the scale ended up on the dining table. Who the hell moved it? Now time for the jokes of the day. What do you call a man in the water with no arms and no legs? Bob. A photographer was crushed today when a massive block of cheddar fell on him. To be fair, the people he was photographing were trying to warn him. Jeez! That's a good one. As I got off the elevator, the operator said, "Have a good day, son." I said, "Don't call me son. You're not my dad." He replied, "Maybe not, but I did bring you up." My grandpa warned people the Titanic would sink, and no one listened. He kept warning them until they got sick of it and kicked him out of the theater. Spoilers! I've offered my elderly neighbor $20 to give me a ride on our stairlift. I think she's going to take me up on it. More glitches up here. Check them out. See you next time.